What if Mercedes' biggest problem this season wasn't speed, but something that happens in the first 3 seconds of the race? After the Chinese Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton released a statement that has put the entire paddock on alert. Ferrari has discovered a way to turn the start into its most dangerous weapon. While the Mercedes remains one of the fastest cars when a race settles down, the SF26 seems to take off at the exact moment the lights go out. It is not an illegal part, it is not a technical trap, and it is not something that the FIA has pointed out, but it is such a precise combination between the clutch, the deployment of hybrid energy, and the preparation of the car before the start that is leaving a Mercedes weakness completely exposed. In China, it happened again. Hamilton gained positions in the first meters before the W17S could react, and most worrying thing for the German team is that this does not seem like a stroke of luck, but rather a pattern that is beginning to repeat itself. Now, the big question is inevitable. Has Ferrari found the exact point where Mercedes is vulnerable, and is Hamilton using that secret to change the balance of power in Formula One? Throughout the Chinese Grand Prix weekend, the same pattern was repeated. In the sprint race, Hamilton started from 4th position, and as soon as the lights went out, he launched an immediate attack that surprised even several paddock analysts. In a matter of seconds, he managed to put himself in a much more competitive position than the Ferrari's overall pace for the rest of the lap suggested. It was a maneuver that not only attracted attention for the aggressiveness of the movement, but also for the way in which the SF26 seemed to react in the first meters with extremely clean traction and an initial acceleration that was very difficult for its rivals to match. Something very similar happened in the main race. When the traffic lights went out, the Ferrari again showed that ability to start with an almost perfect reaction, allowing Hamilton to immediately gain positions and put himself in a strategic position before Mercedes could exploit its advantage in top speed. That initial moment is becoming the only real window that Ferrari has to hurt its closest rivals, and Hamilton seems to have perfectly understood how to use it. Before the W17 imposes its overall performance, the Briton tries to build an advantage in those first seconds that he can then defend for the rest of the race. And this is where the real problem begins for Mercedes. Because when a weakness is repeated several times in the same phase of the race, it stops being a coincidence and begins to become a technical pattern. Within the German team itself, they have already recognized that the start phase has become one of their main work focuses since the beginning of the season, especially after seeing how Ferrari was able to take advantage of that situation on more than one occasion. This means that the SF20SIXS advantage is not simply a good reaction from Hamilton, but the result of a perfectly tuned system that is allowing the Ferrari to transform the first few meters into a real strong point on the grid. And the most disturbing thing for Mercedes is that this phenomenon has only just begun. The season is still in its first races, and the calendar is long, with circuits that could further amplify the importance of the starts. If Ferrari continues to perfect this characteristic of the SF26 and Hamilton continues to execute these starts with the same precision we saw in China, the German team could find itself in an unexpected situation, having one of the fastest cars on the grid, but starting too many races from the back before the first corner has even finished. If you look at Hamilton's starts at the Chinese Grand Prix in more detail, it begins to become clear that this is not just a quick reflex or a perfect reaction to the lights out. What is really happening is much more complex. Hamilton himself hinted after the race that the SF26 is using an extremely precise combination between various car systems to maximize acceleration in the first meters. It's not a single magic element, but a very fine synchronization between the clutch, the engine's torque map, and the deployment of hybrid energy. When all of these factors are aligned correctly, the Ferrari can transfer an enormous amount of power to the asphalt without losing traction, and that creates that feeling that the car just shoots forward as soon as the lights go out. One of the most important elements of this entire process is the clutch. In a modern Formula One car, output depends on an extremely controlled release of this system. If released too quickly, the car skids and loses acceleration. If it is released too slowly, the engine power is not transmitted correctly, and the car is stuck on the grid for a fraction of a second that can be fatal. Ferrari seems to have found an almost perfect balance point in this regard. The SF26 clutch allows for progressive power delivery that prevents slippage while keeping initial acceleration as aggressive as possible. That precision in the release is one of the keys that explains why Hamilton is making such clean starts. But the clutch is only part of the equation. The second fundamental factor is in the management of a hybrid system, specifically in the use of the MGUK during the first meters of the start. This component is responsible for converting the energy stored in the battery into additional power for the rear wheels. In the case of the Ferrari, analysts have detected that the team is using an extremely aggressive display of energy just after releasing the clutch. This means that the car receives an extra boost at the exact moment when traction is most critical, increasing initial acceleration without compromising the car's balance. Added to this is another element that often goes unnoticed by the public, but is actually absolutely decisive: the preparation of the car before the start. During the formation lap, drivers perform a series of maneuvers designed to properly warm up the tires and brakes. If temperatures are not in the ideal window, all the power the engine generates is simply lost in the form of skating. Ferrari appears to have perfected this preparation process, allowing the SF26 to arrive at the grid with the ideal temperature and grip level to transform all that energy into effective acceleration. However, there is an additional technical detail that could explain why this advantage appears precisely in the first meters and not in the rest of the straight. Some telemetry analysis suggests that the SF26 is arriving on the main straight with a slightly higher battery level than its rivals. This happens because the Ferrari seems to recover more energy in certain corners before the straight, especially in sections where the car supports a lot of lateral load. That small difference, which may be just 10 or 15% extra available battery, allows Hamilton to deploy more power at the exact moment of departure. And although this advantage disappears as the straight becomes longer and the engines enter their normal operating regime, those first meters may be enough to gain 1 or even 2 positions before reaching the first corner. And this is where the real reason why Mercedes starts to worry appears. Because this kind of advantage is extremely difficult to neutralize quickly. It's not about installing a new part or modifying a spoiler. It is a question of software, clutch calibration, energy management, and preparing the car before the start. Fine-tuning all of those elements requires time, testing, and a huge amount of data. Meanwhile, Ferrari and Hamilton seem to have found a formula that works, and each perfect start reinforces the feeling that this small technical detail could become a much bigger factor than it seemed at the start of the season. If what happened in China was just a good one-off outing, Mercedes probably wouldn't be too worried. In Formula One, it is normal for a driver to have a perfect reaction in a specific race, or for a car to find better traction in certain track conditions. But what is beginning to worry the German team is that this phenomenon does not seem like an accident or a coincidence. Everything indicates that Ferrari has found an extremely fine-tuned procedure for starts, and Hamilton is executing it with almost surgical precision every time the lights go out. This has a very important strategic consequence. In modern Formula One, track position remains one of the most decisive factors for the final result of a race. Overtaking on many circuits is extremely difficult, even when a car has better pace. Therefore, gaining positions at the start can completely change the development of a race. If Hamilton manages to get in front of a Mercedes in the first meters, it forces the German team to enter a much more complicated scenario, managing the dirty air, depending on alternative strategies, or waiting for a mistake from a rival to regain the position. And in a long season, repeating that situation several times can mean losing crucial points. For Mercedes, the problem is not only technical, but also strategic. The W17 may still have clear advantages in aerodynamic efficiency and straight-line speed when the race enters its normal phase, but those advantages lose value if the car starts the race trapped behind a Ferrari. The time lost trying to overtake can be enough to ruin an entire race strategy, especially on circuits where DRS does not always guarantee a clean overtake. That is why within the team it is already recognized that improving starts has become an urgent priority since the first races of the season. Furthermore, there is another factor that could further amplify this problem for Mercedes: the calendar. The season is just beginning, and there are still many circuits where the start has an enormous weight in the final result. On routes where the first corner arrives quickly after the main straight, a perfect start can decide several positions before the cars even complete the first sector. If Ferrari continues to exploit this advantage, and Hamilton continues to execute starts as clean as those we saw in Shanghai, the German team could find itself repeating the same scenario over and over again throughout the year. What the Chinese Grand Prix left is a very clear warning for Mercedes. Even having one of the most complete cars on the grid, there is a phase of the race where Ferrari has found an advantage that can change everything. The start is becoming that decisive moment where Lewis Hamilton is making the difference with the SF26, using an extremely precise combination between clutch, deployment of hybrid energy, and preparation of the car that transforms the first meters into a perfect opportunity to attack. is not an illegal trick or an isolated revolutionary innovation, but an almost surgical optimization of the entire pre-start process that Ferrari seems to have perfected better than anyone at this start of the season. For Mercedes, the problem is not only losing a position at the start. The real risk is in everything that happens afterward. When a car starts behind its rival, it enters a much more complex scenario. Dirty air, greater tire wear, condition strategies, and less freedom to exploit the true pace of the car. That is why this small advantage that Ferrari has discovered may end up having a much greater impact than it seems at first. In a long championship, repeating this pattern several times could result in lost points that are then impossible to recover. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.